10-month-old baby were murdered by the cartel. 16-year-old Alyssa Perez was found deceased holding her 10-month-old baby Nicholas in a ditch in Tulare, California. Officers arrived to the home around 4 a.m. after someone called police about a large number of gunshots. When they entered the home, they found another victim in the doorway, and there were 3 more bodies inside, including an older woman. All the victims were murdered by a gunshot to the head, and 2 other women actually survived by hiding in a nearby trailer. It's been said that Alyssa tried to run away with her baby, but then she was found and murdered. Investigators believe that this was a gang-related attack and that they were trying to send a message. But after further investigation, police records revealed that the week prior, a search warrant was done on the property and guns, marijuana, and meth were found, which is why they concluded that this crime was drug-related. Police also mentioned that the manner and swiftness of the killings suggested that the men were experienced in murder.
Creepy facts that will disturb you. There might be a haunted Russian radio station. UVB 76 is a low-frequency radio station that's been broadcasting since 1982. No one knows where the broadcast is originating. It's mostly just a buzzing noise with the occasional Russian voice transmission. Scaphism was an ancient form of execution where you'd cover someone with honey, stick them in a hollow log, and allow insects to eat them alive. Babies grow mustaches in the womb that then spread to cover their entire body in hair called lanugo. The body hair keeps them warm and helps regulate body temperature. Ladybugs are known to eat their own larvae to ensure the survival of other larvae. Pigs can eat an entire human body, mostly because they'll just eat anything. There's such a thing as homicidal sleepwalking. It's also called homicidal somnambulism or sleepwalking murder.
Genius people who beat the system, part 3. A girls' college had a rule that said you can't have carved pumpkins in your dorm room. But the rule didn't say anything about pineapples, so she went ahead and carved one of those. This guy's new job required a photo of him in a suit for their website. But since he doesn't own a suit, he just photoshopped his face over this guy's face, and honestly, it looks pretty real. This sign says no bicycle riding, rollerblading, roller skating, skateboarding, or scooter riding, but it doesn't say no unicycling. These signs say that if you park on this side, you have to pay for parking, and if you park on the other side, you will get towed. So this guy parked in between both of the signs, so he doesn't have to do either. That's pure genius. A guy posted this photo online and said whenever he parks illegally, he puts a fake ticket on his windshield so the cops won't give him a real one. That's pretty creative.
Most terrifying urban legends from around the world. Once there were 3 teenagers who broke into an abandoned amusement park in Canada. 2 of them went inside first while the third waited outside. But after a while, the 2 who went inside first still hadn't come out. So the one left waiting decided to go inside as well to find his friends. That's when he found one of his missing friend's phones lying on the ground. And in the camera roll, he saw something terrifying. On his friend's phone, he saw a photo of a strange door with a huge mouth inside. That turned out to be the urban legend of the Smile Room, a giant creature that manifests itself as a fake room with a door to lure its victims in. It can move to different locations and disguise itself as a normal-looking door. So once you walk in, it'll devour you. So remember, the next time you see a door in an unusual place, don't go near it. And follow for more stories.
Disturbing facts you wish you never knew. Part 2. In toddlers, their adult teeth are located beneath their eyes. Dogs like squeaky toys because it reminds them of a small animal being killed. It takes longer to say this than this. Try it and let me know. Your feet can sweat up to 20 liters per day. And if rabbits get stressed out enough, they will eat their young. Make sure to like and follow for part 3.
Animals you probably haven't seen as babies.
What do you mean haven't seen as babies?
Hyenas.
I've seen a baby hyena actually. Oh no! Tell me that's not adorable. Why is there scary music in the background?
Camels.
Right, I've not seen a baby camel. I'll own that. Oh. Look at the eyelashes. I take it.
Hedgehogs.
A baby hedgehog. Oh, that looks like something else. Oh, it keeps making me take it back. Sloths. Oh, my heart. I will adopt one right now.
Raccoons.
This is mine. Okay, maybe not a rat. They're a bit reckless. Okay, all right. Yeah. Right, okay. You might have won me over there a little
Skunks.
bit. Oh no, there's not room for two smelly people in my house, and I'm enough.
Facts that might save your life one day. Alright, so if a person you don't know shows up to your house and asks for help in the middle of the night, do not open the door, especially if you're a girl alone, because human traffickers tend to use these tactics to lure girls outside. So just make sure all your doors are locked and call the police straight away. Next, if you ever feel like something bad is about to happen, trust your guts and just leave, because in most cases you might be right. Now, if you're ever involved in a plane crash and it crashes in the ocean, whatever you do, do not inflate your life jacket. Instead, wait until you're outside the plane, because if you inflate it while you're inside, you could get trapped inside as the water level rises. And finally, if you were ever to go homeless during winter, do not sleep on the ground, because people have literally frozen to death that way. Instead, try to find some cardboard pieces and sleep on that, because the ground itself absorbs way more heat than cardboard.
Scary facts you wish you never knew.
There is a shack called the Devil's Toy Box in Louisiana, and for some reason people who go in lose their mind. Do you know the tingly feeling you get when you eat a pineapple? Well, that's because the pineapple is eating you. It has an enzyme called bromelain, and that enzyme eats meat, which you're made of. Now you can check if your phone activity is being monitored. Just click on share, slide all the way to the end, click more. And if any apps appear before your contacts, you should delete it immediately. Sharks have been around for 420 million years, meaning they have survived all 4 big mass extinctions, making them older than dinosaurs, Mount Everest, and even some trees on this planet. The person who invented homework came up with the idea as a punishment for students.
Morbid Facts, Part 284. In the year 2000, 19-year-old Kevin Hines began hearing voices in his head telling him it was time to die. So he rode a bus to the Golden Gate Bridge and jumped over the railing, a decision he would instantly regret. Upon impact, the 220-foot plunge shattered 3 of his vertebrae and narrowly missed severing his spine by just 2 millimeters. Against all odds, he miraculously survived the fall and surged with the sudden will to live. But the weight of his clothes combined with his injuries made it impossible to keep his head above the surface. Just when he was losing the strength to hold on, Kevin suddenly felt an unusual force from below lifting him above the water's surface, where he remained until the Coast Guard reached him. Later on, eyewitnesses revealed that a wild sea lion had been supporting his body and keeping him afloat until rescuers arrived. Kevin's story gained massive media coverage as he has since become a motivational speaker and an advocate for suicide prevention.
Imagine living your entire life thinking your dad died from a heart attack and then finding out later that he was actually unalived in his home and the case was never solved. When Madison McGee was just 16 years old, she found out that her dad, John Cornelius McGee, also known as JC, was shot in his home and no one ever figured out who did it. It was shortly after 6 a.m. on July 11, 2002 in Bridgeport, Ohio, and police received a call from Madison's 16-year-old sister because she heard a gunshot and found her dad lying in a pool of his own blood. Shortly after her sister's call to the police, they received another call from John's nephew, Omar. Omar was actually living next door with his mom, Pearl, who was JC's sister, and his girlfriend, Kim. And Omar tells police that a group of 4 men walked into Pearl's home armed with guns and began demanding money, and they were specifically looking for a safe. They dragged Pearl from her bed and tied her and Kim up with a telephone cord, covered their heads in blankets, poured alcohol on them, and threatened to light them on fire. They then took Omar, and he was able to escape as he fled to a nearby auto shop and called police. These men then went over to JC's home, walked up the steps, and fatally shot him in the head in his doorway and left him for his 16-year-old daughter to find. JC was a former drug dealer turned confidential informant to local law enforcement, and Madison actually has an entire podcast about this where she interviews friends and family. She even meets up with one of the prime suspects to interview him. I want you to go listen to Madison's podcast, Ice Cold Case, because this is her story about her father to tell. But this entire case is just insane. And Madison was just 6 years old when her father was taken away from her, and she was told by her family that her dad just died from a heart attack, when in fact he was unalived in cold blood in his own home.
Things that are more creepy at night. Schools. Schools at night. Alleyways. Alleyways at night. Cemeteries. Cemeteries at night. Parking garages. Parking garages at night. The woods. The woods at night. Hospitals. Hospitals at night. A cabin in the woods. A cabin in the woods at night.
So Diddy killed Tupac and Biggie Smalls? Am I hearing this right? Prosecutors confirmed that Diddy's name was used 77 times in documentation alleging that Diddy was the one that put the hit out on Tupac. Keefe D, the man who is convicted of and has admitted to killing Tupac, confirms that Diddy offered him $1 million for the hit. So back in the 90s, Diddy was doing a West Coast tour and hired Keefe D to be his bodyguard. Keefe D says it's at that time that Diddy offered him $1 million to kill Tupac. And if you're thinking Keefe D just brought this up now because Diddy's already in a heap of shit, you're wrong. Court records indicate this was brought to the prosecutor's attention back in 2009. Now, Eminem has stepped it up a notch, saying that not only did Diddy kill Tupac, he killed Biggie Smalls too. Listen to his new song lyrics. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Part 22 of some of the most horrifying submechanophobia things I've ever seen in my life. This is a gigantic 40-foot tall animatronic that is at the Rio de Janeiro festival in Brazil. Now I'm going to show you a video of it moving later, but look how absolutely massive it is compared to these tiny people. Absolutely not. Yeah, look how big it is. When you get to the end of this video and you see how big it is moving, you are going to be ill. This is what the entire float looks like. It is absolutely massive. Absolutely massive.
Less than 2 hours after that video was filmed, the girl on stage in that video would be dead. Her name was Christina Grimmie. She was a famous singer here in America, and she was murdered in 2016. So Christina had been making music and performing all of her life, but her real rise to fame started when she was on the show The Voice. After Christina was on The Voice, the world kind of opened up for her. She made her major label debut, she started going on tours all across the world, and she was a rising star. Sadly, though, she attracted the attention of a very disturbed individual who can actually be seen here in footage from her final show, creepily watching Christina perform from the crowd, knowing what he was about to do. That man was 27-year-old Kevin James Loibl. So Christina's performance that evening ended at about 10 p.m. And afterwards, she moved over to a little booth to sign autographs for people who had come to the show. At around 10:24 p.m., Kevin approached Christina. Christina, thinking he was just like every other fan there, opened her arms up to give him a big hug. But that's when Kevin retrieved a Glock pistol from his person and shot her 3 times at point-blank range. After the shots rang out, Christina's brother tackled Kevin to the ground. Yes, sadly, Christina's brother was there working the booth with her that evening. But after a fight, Kevin managed to get himself free. He retrieved his Glock and he took his own life right next to Christina's body. Sadly, Christina had been shot twice in the chest and once in the head. And by 10:59 p.m., not even a full hour after she finished her performance, Christina Grimmie was pronounced dead. Afterwards, Kevin's family left this note for the media. This was all they had to say after the tragedy. But fans, even to this day, remember Christina as an amazing singer and talk about the potential that she had if she hadn't been taken from this world so quickly. If you want to listen to more true crime stories, check out the podcast Murder in America that I co-host with my wife, Courtney. You can listen to it on any streaming platform.
Introducing Gemini in Google Slides. AI that
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Hey, excuse me. Nada. Are you doing dishes? I hope so.
Creepy facts that will disturb you. Somehow the organs in your body know exactly what order that they're supposed to be in. So when surgeons perform their job, they don't typically reorganize them because they rearrange themselves correctly automatically.
Disturbing things Disneyland doesn't want you to know. A few years ago in Disney World, Florida, a little boy was snatched by a crocodile, and his remains were found a few hours later in a lake next to the park. Apparently, the kid was just next to the water when the crocodile ate him up. Next, did you know that Disneyland has only closed 3 times throughout history? They were when JFK was shot, after a massive earthquake in 1994, and on September 11th, 2001. So let's just say they count on keeping their parks open for as long as possible. And finally, some rumors say that the skulls on the Pirate of the Caribbean ride are actually real human skulls. And if that's real, that is pretty messed up.
How is it possible for an entire group of people to hear or see someone who doesn't actually exist? Welcome to Creep Time on TikTok with Silas Dean. This is the unexplained mystery of Frida Sofia. In 2017, Mexico was hit with a devastating earthquake that crushed multiple buildings, one of those buildings being a school right in Mexico City. There were, of course, numerous children and adults who were trapped under the rubble, but there was one girl in particular who caught the attention of the media. A 12-year-old girl trapped under the debris who was responding to rescuers saying that her name was Frida Sofia. There was round-the-clock coverage, and a nation assembled around the story of Frida, and she became a symbol of hope in these efforts to rescue the children and her. Rescuers and journalists had multiple accounts of speaking with Frida and confirmed that she was far down beneath the rubble underneath a piece of granite but physically stable. There are some responders who report even seeing her wiggle her fingers far down through a crack in the debris. But here's the problem. Frida did not exist. The school actually comes forward and makes a statement saying that they have all children accounted for and they have never had a record of a girl named Frida Sofia. Multiple stations and people of leadership have to come forward and make statements of retraction and say that she's not down there, she never was, and she's not real. Suspected of being one of the largest cases of mass hysteria in modern history, it is completely unexplained how there were so many separate accounts of people who claim to speak to her or even see her beneath the rubble. Ultimately, the existence of Frida is a complete mystery, and there are still some people who believe she was really down there in that debris.
This video shows how many McDonald's each country has, and we're starting off with Russia at 0. We're slowly going to be ramping up to the country with the most McDonald's. It's crazy to think about how almost every single country in the world has a McDonald's. No matter where you are, you could literally walk for 10 minutes and find a McDonald's around you. Now, we have to admit, we all know who is going to be number 1. It has to be the US, but I wonder who is in the top 3. Right, we have South Korea with 447. Australia at 981, which is kind of crazy to think about. France is up there as well. I don't know, Japan had it like this. But the United States with 13,000, America.
A mother hid her baby daughter in a drawer for 3 years, feeding her only milky Weetabix via a syringe. The toddler was kept a secret from the woman's partner and her other children. Chester Crown Court heard she had never known daylight or fresh air until she was found weeks before her 3rd birthday by the woman's partner. She was left without food for long periods of time and was so malnourished that she had the appearance of a 7-month-old. The mother admitted child cruelty and was jailed for 7.5 years. The judge told her the consequences for the child were nothing short of catastrophic.
Although I do not want to die, I recognize that I deserve to for what I did. My death can change what I did. I would gladly die. And I would like to apologize to the victim's family, to my own family, and to everyone in that room today who had to hear the horrible details of what I did.
This is a story of the worst otter attack in history. And disclaimer, you're going to be mad at the end of this. And not at the otters. This is Silvio Delmar Hollenbach, a Brazilian military man and war hero visiting the Brasilia Zoo with his family when a 13-year-old fell into the otter moat. Except these weren't regular otters. These were giant river otters. And yes, giant's their first name. You know, the ones that can grow to 6 feet long, can turn a caiman into a belt, and put a jaguar in reverse with no key. You've never seen them that shook. The most dangerous thing about them is the power of friendship. Don't laugh, I'm serious. See, in a river that can have an anaconda, caiman, even a cracked out aggro kitty, the animals nicknamed river wolves are considered the most dominant, because if you threaten one of them, it doesn't matter if you're a 300-pound assault weapon with whiskers. Anything seen as a threat to the family gets jumped. And yeah, that 13-year-old was a threat. Hollenbach said the homie back in full sent it into the pool and lifted the injured kid out. Of course, that meant now Hollenbach was a threat. The otters ganged up on him, dragged him into the water, and severely mauled him in front of his family. I'm talking torn to pieces. He'd eventually get pulled out, but getting bit over 100 times in a microbe mosh pit meant he would pass away in a military hospital days later to an infection. His family mourned him, the community celebrated him, and the zoo memorialized him. Yeah, you forgot, you're supposed to be mad. Well, that 13-year-old that got a whole man turned into a chew toy, yeah, if he was grateful, he never said a word. He never thanked the family, he never offered his condolences, couldn't even get a Christmas card in the equation. And this was in the 70s. You know where that kid is now? Well, in 2016, Adelson Florencio da Costa would be arrested for helping scam millions of pension money. So yeah, a war hero got mauled to death just for someone's kid to end up a worse version of Eddie without Ed or Ed. Yep, you're mad now, but I warned you. You know this video is 10 times scarier when you know what giraffes sound like? Giraffes make noise. It's just nothing you'd ever expect, or maybe you would. People be having the wrong idea. I think they see the face card, the lashes, and the fact Friends Ross played one and y'all think it's sweet. Well, imagine a homicidal inflatable salesman, and that's how they settle disputes. They could top off your torso if they wanted to. And they have dinner plates for feet, and they're sharp, meaning if they kick you in the right spot, they could punch your head like a field goal. They're so dangerous, I'm not going to show it, but there's a compilation of mother giraffes trying to defend their babies, only to accidentally delete it themselves by kicking it to death. So yeah, giraffes are a high-stepping sleeper build, and they sound like one too. Ooh, that's a concussion. You see, we used to think this walking chimney was like the G in lasagna, silent, and science said it was because their necks were too long for airflow to reach their vocal cords. Scientists recorded thousands of hours of audio over the course of 8 years to hear what the raft really says. Turns out they say a lot, we just weren't listening. Yeah, imagine hearing that and seeing this. One theory is that it's like infrasound and helps them keep track of each other in darkness. They also think because it sounds so much like ritual chanting that it's literally them just humming themselves to sleep. When you think of it like that, it's not that bad. That doesn't make it sound any less like Jurassic Park. The more you know.
This is a true horrifying story, part 30. This story took place in Medina, Saudi Arabia in the year 2001. And the person who said this story is Dr. Yasser Qadhi. He's someone that is known in the community of the Islamic Da'iyas. There are exorcists from all religions, Muslims, Christians, and Jewish. And their job is to perform an exorcism session on a person who is possessed by a demon or a jinn. When Dr. Yasser was a student, he studied in Medina. There was a known exorcist that practiced ruqya for many years, and Dr. Yasser wanted to learn from him. Back at the dorm of the Islamic college, there was a student that is a fresh convert, just recently converted to Islam. He barely knows anything about the religion, small bits of the Quran, does not know the ahadith, and doesn't know the big scholars in Islam. One day, the students were reading Quran out loud back at the dorm, and this new convert student starts to scream and roll on the ground. They knew he was possessed, so they called Dr. Yasser. Now remember, Dr. Yasser was still a student back then. He was not an expert in exorcism. He goes there and has a 2-hour session of ruqya, the ruqya that he recently learned, trying to kick out the demon out of this kid's body. As he reads Quran, he would see an alien-like movement on the kid's body. His skin would ripple up and down. A human being cannot do this intentionally. He would follow the movement with his hands reading the Quran, and he would see it move somewhere else.
When I was 46 years old, we rented a trailer in Lafayette, Colorado that was haunted as fuck. Almost immediately when we moved in, my mom started having really weird experiences in this house with the entity that lived there. Right away, she started having a recurring nightmare where in the dream, she was asleep and she would wake up in the dream and try to get to the front door, but could just never physically make it. It was too far. She couldn't get there. The weirdest thing that happened is one night she was in bed, awake, and my dad was sleeping next to her asleep. And she felt something sit on the bed next to her, the bed indented. It was an old spring mattress. Again, this is late 70s, early 80s. Indented mattress. And then she felt a kiss on her cheek. Yeah, I too had some weird experiences in that trailer. Even though I was just a little kid, I remember one thing in particular. Every time I took a bath in that house, I felt like I was being watched, and I would take my little washcloth and I would try to cover my body from here, cover myself up, because I felt like I was being watched. Again, I was somewhere 2 to 6 years old. Sorry, 4 to 6 years. I was 4 to 6 years old. I felt like it would stand in the doorway and watch me bathe. Yeah, we were all really happy when we moved out of that creepy ass fucking trailer.
I love this trend. I've watched, I swear, almost every stitch because I love a good ghost story, and I've actually experienced a couple, and most of it comes from my grandparents' house. Now, my grandparents live up in New England, and they live in a house that's very, classic New England, old colonial wooden kind of house, but mostly it looks like it. It really feels like it. But according to others in the area, there used to be a different house. It was abandoned and run down. And when my aunt had first moved up there with her parents, she was still in high school, and the other high school kids said they used to go out at night and dare each other to go in because it was haunted. And we're pretty sure the ghost continued on. So the big story for me, and the one I remember really experiencing that sticks out to me, was when I was 12 or 13. We were up there, and at my grandparents' house, they have an in-law suite with living room, kitchenette, bathroom, bedroom, and that's where my brother and sister were sleeping. I got to sleep in my aunt's room, and I was so excited. And I was up there. I got to stay up a little bit later. I was reading my Jane Eyre book, and my mom had put my younger siblings to bed. And when she did, my sister pointed to the ceiling and went, "What's that?" My mom's like, "Oh, it's just a red light saying that the fire alarm's working, but it never goes off. Don't worry about it." Fast forward an hour or two later, my aunt had come home from a party trying to act all casual because she was still in high school and didn't want anyone to know. She opened up the fridge. All the fire alarms went off. First, my mom blamed her, "What'd you do?" and ran to go get her other kids. And as I was running down the stairs, she's like, "Did you light a candle?" I was like, "No." Slightly ironic because I was reading Jane Eyre, which involves fire. But I was like, "No, I didn't do anything." So we all ran out. The fire department came. They check it out. They come out and talk to my parents and my grandparents, and they're like, it's really weird because all your alarms are going off, but they're not wired to. Like, they're wired that only whatever room the fire or smoke would be in should go off, just that one. But they all went off, and they're like, it's so weird, we don't know what's happening. And they're like, all right, but like, they're from New England, they're probably like, strange things happen. Packing up the trucks to go leave, all the alarms went off again. So like, that for me is the most distinct. From my own personal experiences, there was a lot of like a feeling of someone hovering at the top of the stairs or out of the corner of my eye. I never really saw anything. However, a lot of our family members have. Like, my dad one time was sitting on the bed tying his shoe, looked up, saw a woman in colonial wear, went, must be imagining, and went back to tying his shoe. My uncle saw the same woman pass by the back windows one time, and he is like a non-believer, or at least he was before that. We've narrowed it down that there's probably like a family with 2 kids and then a separate woman based off these experiences. For instance, we definitely know we're kids because my sister used to sit at the piano and be talking and saying that she's teaching the little kids how to play the piano. Our favorite story, though, is the one time that she was playing with my other aunt, and she kept shushing my other aunt's like, why you keep shushing me? She goes, no, they keep trying to speak over you. And then looked at my aunt and went, they don't like you. Like, we have a lot of stories with my sister. But the thing that I think about all the time now was how casually my one aunt, the one that was living with them still at the time, said at Thanksgiving a few years ago, oh yeah, they used to grab my feet at night. I'm like, you don't say that casually. That's so scary. So yeah, like nowadays there's not as much going on. I think there's more stories from my relatives of their own personal experiences with the ghosts. They kind of mind their own business. You don't have that many strange things besides the fire alarm going off. But like, I think the strangest thing was definitely the feet grabbing, and I feel like that made sense to me because I distinctly remember all the years that I lived there, and especially when I would stay in my aunt's room, that I would like run and go under the covers when I would turn the lights off, that I would be like very aware with like no reasoning to feel like I should be aware of, like, don't look this way, don't open your eyes, keep yourself covered. And now I'm like, oh, all those experiences I had growing up make sense after hearing that story. So I have others, but like, yeah, my sister was a weird one when she was a kid too. She definitely was annoyed with a lot of ghosts that she interacted with. But I hope you enjoyed this.
I have a few, but I'm gonna tell this one. So this happened when I was like maybe 10 years old, I want to say. I think my sister was like 8 years old at this time. It was definitely like 4th grade for me, I think 2nd grade for her. So she had a friend coming to sleep over for the weekend. It was like Friday night. And this friend of hers, I've seen her around campus, and I always thought she was a little like off or something. She just always looked very tired, very lethargic. She had like really dark eyes, circles under her eyes. She was always slow moving, slow talking. I was never sure like what was exactly going on there. But anyways, nonetheless, so she was coming to sleep over our house. And my mom was working nights, so my aunt was going to be staying with us that night. So by the time my aunt got there, she was already at home with us, since she came with us after school. And my aunt noticed that she had like a whole bunch of scratch marks on her. So she asked her, where are you getting these scratches? And she starts telling us how she is being scratched up in her sleep at night. So something scratches her up in her sleep. And I think my aunt either responds or one of us responds, like saying like, maybe is it you scratching yourself at night and you just don't remember? And she was just started telling us like, no, there's no way it could be her. Her family knows, like this is something that they discussed. Like she's being scratched up by like some creature at night, like something is coming to scratch her up at night. And I think she noticed like we weren't really believing her. So she started showing us like the different scratches she had on her body. It was on her arms, down her back, down her legs. Like it was just so many scratches on this girl's body, and in different levels of healing. Some of them looked really healed, like they were older. Some of them looked more fresh. I don't even remember how the conversation ended. I just think we all just kind of, like, what more can you really say? She's telling you she's being haunted. I think at this point we were all kind of thinking like maybe she's being heard at home or something at home was happening. I think we just ended up letting it go. The night goes on. At this time, my sister and I still shared a room. So They built a fort in our room. Her and my sister were sleeping on the floor. I was sleeping on the bed. And this night, I literally had nightmares all night, back-to-back nightmares throughout the night. And one in particular that I remember, like, still gives me chills till this day. I wake up middle of the night, or at least it felt like I woke up. And I remember looking over on the floor and I see my sister and her friend and they're sleeping. And it felt like there was like a really blue tint in the room. Like, you know, when the moonlight is coming in, but this felt like a rush of moonlight. Like it was just like really blue in there. And suddenly I just had like a feeling, like a call towards her, like not towards her, towards the living room. And I get up, I start walking towards the living room, and I don't know why I'm walking in the dark. I didn't turn on any lights. I'm just going down the hallway towards this calling. And in our house, like it was like a long hallway. And then once you get to the end of the hallway, you can turn left and there is a balcony in the further end of that room. And I remember turning left and looking out the balcony. And on the balcony, like on the balcony wall, there's this creature. And it's crouched over. And the best way I can explain it, it's kind of like, this is what I imagine like El Chupacabra to look like. If you're around any Latin or Hispanic people, this is what I imagine that to look like. It had like bat wings, like really large, huge, large bat wings, like huge bat wings. And you know how bats kind of have their hands like intertwined in their wings? It had like hands intertwined in its wings. At the end, its nails were super long and gnarly, and it was clutching the wall with its wing arms, but it also had hands and like hands and legs in the middle as well that were clutching in the middle, and then it had these wings that were clutching on the sides, like just massive. And the head kind of looked like probably like a hyena is the best way I can describe, like a hyena head. It was a lot smaller than the body, but the eyes were distinctively human. It was like human eyes. Anyway, so this thing is crouching over and it's staring at me, and it feels like it was talking or beckoning or something. Like its mouth wasn't moving, but I know that it was talking, but I didn't feel like I can speak whatever this thing is saying. I just can feel the calling, like the magnet towards it. And I'm frozen at this point because I feel like I'm awake. This didn't feel like a dream. It felt like I was awake. So I'm frozen in my corner. I'm watching this thing on the balcony, and suddenly it just opens its arms, huge, like it just grew in size. It just opened its arms and it looks like it was going to start flying towards me. So I book it to my room, hop on my bed, and at this point, I don't remember exactly if I kept having nightmares or if I woke up, but eventually in the morning, I remember waking up. I'm waking up like in a sweat. I'm scared. I was a little teary-eyed, and I remember wanting to get to my aunt so I can tell her about my dreams. My sister woke up around the same time. So all three of us are sitting there and we're exchanging these stories. And we've all seen the same thing in our dreams throughout the night. And I can't remember if it was my sister or if it was my aunt, but one of them said that they seen this thing and it was literally on the girl's back, crouching over it in the middle of the night, crouching on her back. So at this point, we're really spooked up. She was still sleeping. Then she wakes up a little after us and she comes to join us. And she had that same look that I've always seen on her. And now to me, I think like that's a haunted look. Like the poor girl was just like haunted. And she comes in and we look at her and there's fresh scratches on her body. And at this point, I believe like, okay, she's not doing this to herself. And I don't think anyone is doing this to her because of some of the marks that I seen. Like there was a mark going from her back all the way to the middle. From her neck all the way to the middle of her back. And I don't think you can scratch your own self like that, like just scratch straight down into your back. So I don't know, but fresh scratches all over her. We're freaked out at this point. We totally believe her. And then she starts telling us more about these Native American folklore or like Native American spirits that her family think it might be. And that's when my aunt decided, you know what, she has to go home. Like, the weekend is going to be cut short. And we ended up walking her home that day, like that morning, immediately, first thing. I remember just being creeped out the rest of the day. We ended up telling like my mom and grandma, and they were just like, we have to pray over the house and to never let her come over again, because we didn't know what they were messing with or like what was exactly going on there. And till this day, I'm still like, what was happening to this girl? Like, how did you get this way? Why are you being scratched up? How come your parents aren't doing something more about, because I don't think you should be going to sleepovers if you're going to be getting attacked by demons. Like, personally, yeah, I wouldn't think that's the best choice at that moment. But anyways, I still don't know what happened to her. We ended up moving, so I don't know where she ended up or what ended up happening to her. But do you guys have you guys heard of something like this? Like, if any Native American people are out there, like, I don't remember the story specifically. I just remember her telling us stories, but I was too scared and too nervous to even like really dive deep or focus on what she was saying. I was just kind of like sleeping.
So a long time ago, when I was first getting in touch with my spirituality, I had this crazy dream where I was sleeping and I knew I was sleeping, but I was fully awake. I was fully conscious and I was in my room. Everything in my room was in its place, but I could not move at all. And I had this feeling of dread, doom. It was really scary. I had never experienced anything like this before. And that feeling kept growing and growing and growing. And at the height of this feeling, and I'm like internally freaking out, my bedroom door slams open. And there is this black figure. It's just black, but it's this outline of what looks to be a human, but he is as tall as the door frame. And it's nighttime, it's already dark, but this figure was darker than that. And it took all of my strength, all of my energy to speak to this figure and say, you are not welcome here. You need to leave immediately. I do not give you permission to be here. And I cannot emphasize how hard it was for me to speak in this dream. It's kind of like, you know, when you have those dreams where you're trying to scream, but you can't. It literally took all of my strength. And this figure was there for maybe about another second, but it felt like forever. It was there for another second. And then my bedroom door slams shut. I woke up immediately after. I'm freaking out. And that is when I learned the importance of protecting yourself when you are getting in touch with your spirituality, because you really are opening a portal. And you don't know what your energy can attract. It can attract good energies, but it can also attract really, really negative energies. And that's what I believe that I was in contact with that night.
Susie girl, that is really, really crazy. It reminds me of this time in high school. I was probably like 14 or 15 years old. My mom had gone to the store and as a little gift given me, my brother, and my little sister betta fishes. So we divvied them up and we said, you know, this one's yours, and this one can be mine. So I kept the betta fishes in my room, right? That'll come in handy later. So one night I'm reading my Bible. Around this time I had a lot of really scary paranormal things happening to me. So I was like, okay, let me get closer to God, right? So I would stay up once everyone is asleep and read my Bible. So many nights I would do this, right? And this particular night, I was reading the Bible. I think it was like midnight or 1. Everybody in the house was asleep. I was the only one that was awake, right? as I'm reading the Bible, I don't remember what part of the Bible I was reading, what book I was in, don't remember. I feel the energy in the room shift and this incredibly dark, demonic presence enter the room. And I could tell that whatever it is was very, very tall and skinny and dark, and it was looking over me. It was peering over me like this, over my bed. I could just look up and just sense that that's where the demonic energy in the room was concentrated, right? So at this point, I think I was like 15 years old or something, so I didn't know how to tell demonic spirits, like anything like that, to leave in the name of Jesus. I didn't know. So I just started freaking out internally. I'm like, what do I do? Like, I was so afraid to move, I froze in fear. So as I'm slowly closing my Bible to try to see what to do, out of the corner of my eye, I see that the fish are freaking out. One fish in particular is freaking out. It's going like this. Also, these beta fishes have never done anything like that before, right? So it's hopping up out of the water, it's jumping, it's just twirling, it's doing a whole bunch of things that I've never seen a beta fish ever do. So at this point, I'm like, no, thank you. And I grab my pillow, close the Bible, run out of that room, and sleep with my mom. The next morning, I tell my mom what happened, and she's like, oh, it's okay, just pray, it's all good. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. There was something in this room with me last night. There was something trying to, I don't know if it was just trying to scare me, if it was trying to grab me, if it was trying to harm me, but all I know, it was very tall, it was very dark, and it was peering over me, and it just felt evil. It didn't feel good, Mom. So she's like, just go in your room, we'll pray, everything's okay, right? I said, okay, all right. I didn't want to go in my room, but I did anyway. I go in my room, I open the door, I'm like looking around, and, everything feels fine the next morning. So I happened to just look over at the fish, and maybe like a week or two prior, I think it was my brother's fish that had passed away. So it was just my sister's fish and my fish, right? And I look over, and my fish, the one that was designated for me, is belly up dead. Dead. I don't know when it died, whether it was after I ran out of that room or early that morning, but whatever was in that room had caused this fish to freak out to the point where it died. So once my mom saw that, she was like, ooh, yeah, you were right. I was like, yeah, I was right. And, ever since then, this happened when I was 14. Every time I open my Bible, I can feel like a presence get angry. Like there's something that's like, don't read that book. Like it tries to like instill a spirit of fear. And it hasn't been that bad as it when I was like 14 or 15. I'm 23 now and nothing like that has happened. But you know what they say about how animals can sense presences, dogs growling at nothing or like that kind of stuff. I feel like the demonic energy, whatever you want to call it, couldn't get to me. So it got to my fish to maybe convey a message like, you need to close this book. But yeah, it's one of the most intense paranormal experiences I've had. Not the last one. I'm sure it won't be the last one. But store-bought pesto, Susie girl, I think you got me beat.
So my stitches don't work. But anyways, me and my sister, we grew up in a very haunted house. We have things happen to us to this day all the time. I'm pretty sure, at least I do, have something attached to me from that house. But anyways, it started off when we were probably 11 to 13 years old. I'm older. And she calls for me from her room, and our rooms are right next to each other. And she's like, Jessica, come here. And I'm like, what do you want? I go in there, and she's like, something just pulled the blanket off of my bed. And I was like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, I'm sure. And I was like, okay, sure it wasn't like the cat or the dog, or it didn't just fall. She's like, no, I know what happened. She's like, it got pulled off of my bed. And I was like, okay. And I hang out with her for a little bit. And I was like, it's probably nothing. The next night she calls for me again. She's like, Jessica, it happened again. And I went in her room and I was like, are you sure it's not just like a coincidence? Like trying to rationalize it. And she's like, no, like it got pulled off of me like twice now, like in the same night. I was like, okay. We told our parents, they didn't do anything, thought it was our imagination being kids. And so a couple nights later she calls for me again. I'm like, no. I was like, you can come in my room. She's like, no, there's a bug on my, she didn't say it happened again, but she was like, Jessica, come here. And I was like, no. And she's like, there's a bug in my room. So I went in there. She's like, there's no bug. And I was like, okay, why'd you lie to me? I was on the other side of the room, and I ran, jumped on her bed, and was like, I'm freaking out. Like, why did you lie to me? And she's like, because I'm scared. I don't know what to do. And I was like, I don't either. Like, I think we should just ignore it. Don't give it any attention. And at this point, it did happen to me once or twice, but I held onto my blanket and didn't let it pull it off of me, and it stopped after a couple minutes. And I think to her, it was happening while she's asleep, and she was waking up to watching it get like pulled off the rest of the way to the floor. And after like a few more times of it happening, she calls me one night. She's like, Jessica, come here. And I'm like, no, you can come here. And she finally runs to my room. The light in my room is on. And we try going to sleep in my room. Have a twin size bed. So we're cuddling, both facing the wall. And I had the blanket over us, and I was holding on to the blanket, and something tried pulling the blanket off of me for a good 2 minutes straight, just tugging on it, kind of hard too. And it finally stopped, and after it stopped, I felt a hand press on my back, like very firmly. I think maybe a little bit after that, a couple minutes, I told my sister, I was like, something just fucking touched me. And so we sat up and like, what do? We can't sleep like this. We're tired. Like, we've got school to go to in the mornings, and our parents didn't really believe us. And we're like, we gotta tell mom and dad again. Like, I don't know what else to do. And so we're waiting, like, because my dad would always come into the kitchen to make a drink, and my room was kind of over the kitchen, so we could hear when he went into it. And so we waited, and we heard my dad go into the kitchen. And so I was like, you sure you want to do this? And she's like, yeah. And so she bolts off my bed and runs to my door, which was open, and she like stops, like stops dead out of a run, and just like stops and freezes there for like a minute almost. I'm like, Jordan, what are you doing? And she didn't answer me. And I thought she was like contemplating it. But she told me that when she ran, there's a giant like obsidian black shadow figure like stopping her from going out of my room, and she couldn't see through it, and like she was just frozen, like scared shitless. And after however long, she finally snapped out of it because she heard my dad make some noise in the kitchen, and she ran down and she was like, something like is pulling the blankets off of us still, and like touched Jessica. And my mom finally came up, and she's like, I'm tired of you guys being scared. Like, I didn't think it was this serious at first. And so we did a prayer, and after the prayer, we finally didn't have any of the blankets get pulled off of us anymore. But we saw the other stuff happen, unfortunately.